Welcome back to the Grand Solar Minimum channel. Today is Saturday, March 6, 2021. Take a look at our space weather first. Right now our solar wind speeds are elevated at 550.6 kilometers per second with a density of 7.3. We are not in a blank sun right now, but we do have one sunspot, that is AR 2807. It is decaying and is really not giving us any kind of threats for any solar flares or anything like that. Sunspot number on this one is 14. Now I know you see the bright region to the south of the one that's Earth facing right now. That is not a sunspot, believe it or not. But the one that is Earth facing directly at us, AR 2807, is a sunspot. Is decaying. It's sunspot number 14, and really we'll get to the forecast for more sunspots here in the near future. Possibly we'll go over to space weather section at thegrandsolarminimum.com just in a second, but we have 32 days without sunspots. That's 49% of the year thus far. Remember, we're kind of using this year as the exit year from the minimum conditions, just like in 2010 when we only had 51 spotless days. I do believe that we'll be able to gauge the strength of this solar cycle based on how our sun performs during the first year and a half of this solar cycle 25. Right now, this cycle is struggling. Now, we have seen an increase in solar winds and G1 geomagnetic storms over the past 7 to 10 days. And what that's done is two things. A, it's raised the TCI, the solar wind, charging up the very top of our atmosphere, raising temperatures ever so slightly in the TCI. And the second thing that this solar wind, continuous solar wind it seems like, is that we are getting a bombardment of cosmic radiation. Now, I do apologize. The stats here on the bottom are incorrect. I can correct that fast. Bear with me. Right now, our cosmic radiation dosage rate is 9.5%. And that is up over the last 7 days at 0.3%. Now, the last time we broadcasted, which I do apologize, it was earlier in the week. We've been a little occupied with the project at the homestead ourselves. But the last time we broadcasted, which was on the 2nd of March, our cosmic radiation dosage was at 7.5%. Now, we have seen a gradual decline in cosmic radiation over the past 3 months. This recent spike to 9.5% is due to all the solar wind that our atmosphere has been experiencing. We have seen at least 4 different events where we've had elevated solar wind speeds of 550 kilometers per second or higher. We've also had a G2 geomagnetic storm that also is an intense, not really very intense, but more intense than a G1, which puts more cosmic radiation in the atmosphere. These highly charged particles fill up in the atmosphere, and right now you can see it's kind of like a log jam, because over the last several months we've seen a classic drop in cosmic radiation dosage rates, and they peak back up around 8.5 and then drop back down to 7. Heck, we had it as low as 6.9% not that long ago. So, you know, you're going to see increases of cosmic radiation when you have multiple high solar wind events like we've had here in the past 7 to 10 days. Again, we've had at least 3 minor G1 storms and 1 G2 geomagnetic storm just in the week or so here lately. So definitely a lot more activity, but something I want to point out, it's still weaker activity. It's nothing strong, it's nothing impressive. This is still the very beginning of this solar cycle get going, and it's still kind of weak. So let's go over to thegrandsolarminimum.com at our space weather section. All right, here we are. And not much action on the solar X-ray flux. AP indices have stayed at 4 or lower over the past couple of days. But again, that increase in KP is still pushing the threshold of storm-like conditions, along with increased solar wind speeds. We have definitely seen our share of highly charged particles in the atmosphere. There is the SDO in motion. Let's take a quick look here, and not a whole lot going on. This sunspot that we're looking at here in dead center is a weak sunspot number of 14. That is AR 2807. This is decayed, is no longer a sunspot, but we do have some areas that we need to keep an eye on the far eastern limb of our star and on the backside as well. And let's take a look at that. The blank areas from stereo B, as we cannot communicate with that satellite anymore. And then you see a couple of bright regions in the northern part of our star. Now, the northern part has not seen the sunspot activity that the southern region has seen. And that is obvious here in this image. Let's try to make this. All right. So these are Earth facing. We can see these right now. And then we have 1, 2, 3 possible situations that could be sunspots. So this looks like we are finally going to wake up and see some active days. Now, we cannot rule out a spotless day because this is decaying. We are looking at this region right here and here, not yet labeled or circled. This is technically already across the eastern limb. It is not a sunspot, but we're watching it for future development. But this one here, if I can zoom in on this a little bit more, that's about as good as it's going to get. That is one that we are going to keep our eye on, and if this develops too, then we will have sunspots in both northern and southern regions, possibly by early next week. And that would be a stronger signal that we are starting to see this cycle begin to get underway. But again, folks, it's March. This is dragging its feet as far as getting the cycles to get its act together and start up again towards the maximum, which is somewhere expected between 24 and 25 before we head back into, yes, another solar minimum. But this time it'll be different, especially coming out of the maximum. We will notice right away, I feel, just because of the lack of sunspots that we will see in this maximum in the first place. And the drop that we'll see will be significant enough to notice almost effective immediately, in my opinion. Just my opinion here. All right, let's take a look at a couple things today or tonight, wherever you are. First space hurricane discovered over Earth's polar ionosphere. Scientists have discovered a space hurricane above the North Pole for the first time, which offered initial glimpse at a phenomenon that could also be taking place on other planets across the universe. The hurricane was raining electrons instead of water, spinning in an anti-clockwise direction. What's interesting about this discovery is, you see it all the time. You're on your Facebook and you're browsing through your feed, and then you see an article showing you this hexagon at the polar region of Saturn, and Jupiter has a phenomenon. So this does not, this doesn't surprise me that they are already thinking these other planets have the same phenomenon happening on Earth as well. So it's a solar system thing. Again, we're all connected to the sun, and I believe these northern spirals, these hexagons, these are our entry points for our connection to our magnetosphere. Just throwing that out there. But again, interesting paper here, discovery. Check it out on watchers.news. I thought I'd just mention that real quick. I wanted to get to the meat and bones of tonight's broadcast, and we put it out there. We talked to Dr. John Casey back in summer of 2017 before he suffered a major stroke, and is on the mend. His recovery is on track, but has stepped away from his previous studies and research, and has focused on health and family, which we respect that, and just glad to hear he's doing well. But John Casey has written a few books, and the one book that really sticks out at me the most is Upheaval by John Casey, of course. This was the last book that he had produced, and this book went over the geological connection between the sun and the earth and volcanic activity and how the correlation did exist. And I want to read from Casey's book Upheaval on if you're reading it from the phone version on the PDF, it'd be page 95, and it says here in quotes, "It could be concluded that there exists a significant likelihood, greater than 80%, that the current recently started solar hibernation may result in historic scale global volcanic eruptions and record earthquake activity within the continental United States." It reads on here, "The solar hibernation identified by Casey, 2008, is currently underway. Results of this study and the high correlation between described volcanism and earthquakes and solar hibernations warrants the widest decimation of warning to personnel and governing organizations in high-risk geophysical zones. It is expected beginning at any time during the next 20 years of solar hibernation." This is back in 2008. So within the next 20 years, which would take us up to 2028. "That potentially historic volcanic eruptions are likely globally, and similarly record-setting new earthquakes are likely within the continental U.S., which I already said. 2010 paper may have been the first quantified the risk of major earthquakes and volcanoes during the cold phase, the solar hibernations of the sun cycles. In subsequent letters to FEMA in June of 2015 and 2016, research was explained that made it clear that the probability for a significant geophysical risk existed, and the window of opportunity for these risks to reach critical stage was 2017 to 2038. He talks a lot about the New Madrid and, of course, the worldwide eruptions of volcanoes, earthquakes. And the reason why I wanted to mention John Casey's work and his predictions is because if you look at Watchers.news and other news organizations, but mainly Watchers, they cover a lot of the worldwide volcanic and earthquake activity stuff. We can see that this is definitely an uptick. 15,000 earthquakes hit the Reykjanes Peninsula in Iceland. Sorry if I messed that one up. Reykjanes, I think that's how you say that anyway. The Icelandic Met Office had detected around 15,000 earthquakes. This was starting on February 24th. A few of them rose over 4.0, 2 over a 5.0. Of course, we know there are several underwater volcanoes in this region. Concerns are more volcanic activity to erupt. We had a powerful earthquake. I mean, my God, March 4th, big day for seismic activity. Powerful earthquakes at 8.1, a 7.4, and a 6.1 hit the Kermadec Islands. Tsunami warnings were issued as well. And I can look at my earthquake feed right now and look at how many small 5.0s and higher that we've had today. Gisborne, New Zealand just had a 4.9. Indonesia, Torel, 5.2. Gisborne, 4.7. Aftershocks. Marina Islands, 5.0. Gisborne again, 5.2. Hawaii, a small 2.3. Kermadec Islands region, 5.0. Also, Marina Islands, 5.0. 5.3 again in the Kermadec Islands region. This is all the way back to 6 o'clock. And that's Eastern time, so that's 3 hours ago. So I've already named off about 5 or 6 or more. And earlier in the afternoon, chromatic region again, 5-2, 5-2, 4-7, all three of those in the same region. And then again at 3:45, a 5-1. And then Papua New Guinea got in on some action with a 5.3. Afghanistan, we got rocked at a 4.1 today. Alaska, 2.9. Chromatic regions again, 5.1. This is just the day. And I'm only at 248. More in New Zealand, 4.9. Greece, 4.4. They also had a strong earthquake, 6.3 not too long ago. Loyalty Islands popping back up again at 5.1 at 147 today. Earlier, 5.1 in Japan. The Bonin Islands, 5.5 in the Marina Islands regions. That was at 1 o'clock. So all day long, we are riddled with 5.0s and higher all day long in 3 specific regions. The Chromatic Island region, Gisborne, New Zealand, and of course, the Marina Islands have been rocking as well. So a couple oldie but goodies have been showing back up. But that's just, in this recent activity of earthquake, it's safe to mention too that according to long-term records, about 1900, they're dating it back to, we expect about 16 earthquakes, major earthquakes that is, in any given year. That includes 15 earthquakes in the magnitude of the 7 range, 1 earthquake in the magnitude of 8 or greater. Now, we are already seeing the 8.1. We've had over 4 to 5, I believe, 7-point earthquakes. Some have been downgraded. So we're about 2.5 months into the new year, and we already have our 8.1 and higher. And we've already had more than a handful, about a half dozen of 7.0s since the beginning of the year. So that gives you an idea. Well, we're slightly ahead of things right now. If we continue at this pace right now, we'll be slightly over what the average major earthquake actually will be beyond that. It'll be double. It'll be double, just about double the amount of expected earthquake activity. So the correlation is we are in a low solar pattern right now. But the current status of our sun is quiet. It's not producing much. It's low solar activity. It's weak geomagnetic storms. It's weak solar wind. It's small, puny sunspots that, by the way, back in the Dalton, hell, even back in the Maunder minimum, these sunspots wouldn't even be acknowledged as sunspots. So I believe that we are seeing everything that we're supposed to be seeing so far when it comes to grand solar minimum. But that's not all. Another eruption in Etna, 39,000 feet, March 4th. This precedes a 40,000 feet that already happened at Mount Cinnabung. So now we've had 2 volcanoes that have went off with a 40,000 ash plume within the last 7 days. And a tubo volcano alert was raised after 1,700 earthquakes since January 20th here in the Philippines. Again, more activity, less solar activity, more seismic activity, increased eruptive activity at the Pacaya volcano, heavy ashfall reported Guatemala. The ashfall here was only about 1,600, but it did produce 2 new lava flows as well. Vina Minoff volcano alert raised after sensors detect small explosion in Alaska. The AVO has raised the volcano alert to a watch and the aviation color code to orange for this particular volcano, the Vina Minoff volcano, on March 4th, 2021. Again, this is all recent stuff. This earthquake activity, these strong earthquakes, these volcanoes. Now we're getting alerts. We're getting more activity. Also, I want to report that Utah is reporting some strange and unusual earthquakes as well. 3.4 that hit there not too long ago. So John Casey wrote about it, and boy, is he right on cue as far as the uptick has happened so far. Now, we haven't seen that catastrophic event for earthquake or volcano just quite yet, but think about this for a minute. We know that we are going to be in this grand solar minimum from now until somewhere in the middle 2050s at least. And this is just the very beginning. So if we're just seeing the very beginning of this, and what we're seeing right now, this uptick is just the tip of the iceberg. Imagine what kind of things we'll be dealing with in the early 2030s, the late 2020s. John Casey's work is credible, and it speaks for itself right now. We're not even into the teeth of this grand solar minimum yet, and we're already starting to see the upticks. Yeah, this year is going to be just a barely double the average major earthquakes. Right now, at this pace, we're not even 3 full months into the year, and we've got our first 8-point earthquake of the year already. Hopefully it's the last one. I'm not rooting for this stuff. I'm just reporting it. And, you know, John wrote about it. John predicted it. John and several other people, like Willie Soon, who've done the research between the correlation of the solar cycles and Earth's climate and also Earth's seismic activity. And, you know, we talked to John several years ago in 2017. Great guy, great conversation. And I always say this channel has always been based foundation of John Casey's work, Valentina Zarkova as well. You'd have to say we have a two-headed monster when it comes to the two people that we really look towards when it comes to grand solar minimum information. But this uptick in all this activity, guys, this is part of, I mean, I just told you about how we've had geomagnetic storms over the past 7 days, increased solar wind speeds over the past 7 days. We've had sunspot activity over the past 7 days, and look what's happened here on Earth. We've ignited volcanoes. Several have went off at the 40,000 ash plumes. Several with continuous flows of lava. Etna has gone off over 8 times major eruptions in the last 7 to 10 days. What's the correlation is the activity that's happening with the sun right now. So I don't know how else to put it across to anybody. I feel like the writing is on the wall when it comes to the seismic and volcanic activity that John predicts and predicted to happen, which has happened and is happening. Now, as far as the cold weather part of it, John also was very helpful with me on my education about cold epochs. And we are seeing a lot of wild stuff. Obviously, in Canada, this is not so crazy. But winter is trying to wind down here in the United States. So really the only area that I can report about winter weather here in Alberta, they go out like a lion, it appears here. Harsh winter conditions including rain, strong winds, heavy snow hit parts of Atlantic Canada on Monday, March 1st. Just as the winter season was coming to an end, severe weather caused disruption as well as dangerous travel. Again, Canada, Atlantic side. Colder air right now is in the northeast here in the United States, and I believe we're going to see the majority of that. Cold blast sweeps through northeast following winter storm in the western U.S. Parts of New York and New England are recording below 0 degrees wind chills Friday morning, March 5th. That was yesterday. As a cold blast sweeps through the northeast, cold wave came after a winter storm brought heavy snow to parts of the west on Thursday, March 4th. Here in the northeast, I thought we were going to see at least one more significant snowfall of 6 to 8 inches or more in the region, at least where I live, and that's not going to happen. In fact, I'm really negative when it comes to any more winter weather as far as the month of March is concerned. Anything of major concerns. There is a chance around March 20 or later we could see a storm develop, but we'll see. That's too far out. But right now, the majority of this cold air is about to make an exit. This cold air that's in place right now, I can tell you I'm in it right now, and the last 3 days have been pretty chilly. So this warm up that we're getting ready to have, we're going to be in the 30s tomorrow and Monday, and then in the 50s for the next 4 days after that. So that's going to be good stuff. We've been below freezing for a lot of the winter. Very few days above freezing, 2 days in the 50s since winter started, and maybe less than 10 days in the 40s since December 15th. And very much easily said that we have spent the rest of the winter at 35 or below, no doubt. It's been a cold one. Ready for a warm up for sure. So hopefully this is the last of the biting cold air, and we'll check that out here in a bit on our GFS. But first, we're a little late with this. Well, Roy was too, because I was ready for it on Tuesday and he didn't have it. So anyway, it's out. And the data says that we rose to 0.20 degrees above baseline. There are other sources that are calling it for something else. The variety of temperature readings has come back as 0.01 above baseline. Then there was a 0.12 above baseline. And then there was a 0.26 above baseline. And then the UAH came in with 0.20. As you can see here, we had lots of cold air, some serious cold air pour into the middle of the United States for most of February. Lots of cold air everywhere, in fact. So I'm a little surprised at some of the readings. Didn't expect to see a rise in the temperatures, but nonetheless, we are still trending down at this time as La Nina is winding down. Winter in the northern hemisphere is winding down. Now we have to be on the lookout for our winter in the southern hemisphere. And talking to David Birch, aka Starman, was showing me a chart of Antarctica's ice growth right now, and it's already ahead of schedule, folks. And winter is only just getting underway as we're starting to see our spring. They're starting to see their cooler weather. Their summer is winding down into fall as we speak, and they'll be into winter temperatures soon. So ice growth is at above average record levels right now. They are expecting to see the ice in Antarctica grow at an incredible rate, according to David Birch as well. So let's take a look. I think I'm losing my voice here. Bear with me, folks. Been a little bit under the weather here past couple days. Checking out GFS, kind of boring right now. Just in the Northwest Mountain area. Oregon and Washington, only areas. BC and Alberta also seeing snow. This is Monday, March 8th. Much more warmer air moving in across the United States, keeping the snow well above the Canadian line. Some spotty showers in Northern California and across the Rockies, but that's it. Nothing, based in the, major snowstorm hitting the Midwest or anything like that. More mild air to the Midwest and to the Northeast by the middle of next week as well. March 12th, rainstorms, mainly no snow. Snow in the Rockies, though, on the backside of this as Saturday, March 13th. The storm tries to get its act together here. There's indications that it could be cold enough again in Amarillo for snow. But the main focus of this system right here on the 14th is going to be the severe weather that could bring across the Tennessee River Valley. Also into southwest Ohio. We'll be on alert for that. And then as this gets further east into the northeast, it gets a little bit lighter, heavier rain along I-95 corridor, snow above the Canadian border, mainly rain, a possible changing to snow by the time this system makes its way out of New England. And that's it, guys. Maybe a coating to an inch on the ground, March 14th, March 16th. So really nothing really big and significant as far as snow. Cold air, yes. GFS is indicating the Northeast will continue to see colder temperatures progress throughout the middle of the month and towards the end of the month. So we're not out of the woods as far as cold, but there is a storm, like I said earlier in the broadcast, that looks like it could develop here around the 20th of March. This looks to affect the northern Plain State regions as a winter's kiss goodbye, possibly enough cold air in the Northeast if we don't see a big ridge and fridge here, which, looking at this GFS radar, it looks like temperatures will rise in the Northeast, and this will be just a rain event and snow to the north in Canada. Temperatures also indicate that we'll stay cold in the Northeast and the Great Lakes regions, but that spring-like air temperatures are coming starting next week. Look at the Central Plains states all over to the Midwest, 50s and 60s and 70s all across the South as well, warming up a little bit warmer into the 80s in parts of Texas. And that cold Arctic air trying to make its comeback by the middle of the month here. And that's mainly going to affect the Great Lakes and the Northeast and the Northern Plains states. So nothing real unusual for this time of year as far as temperatures go. A surge in temperatures across the Middle Tennessee Valley and Kentucky regions by March 14th. So be on the lookout for that. Some nice weather here as we wrap up March, but then more cold air trying to invade the northern parts of the United States. And it looks like it kind of succeeds a little bit. Kind of putting out those early spring highs of 70s and 80s in the South, keeping them in the 50s and 60s for a little while longer. And finally, this cold air does begin to lift up by the 21st of March, and that warmer air from the Gulf begins to persist once again. So overall, why do I think that we're winding down? That might have been the last cold blast. There's your snowfall for the next 15 days. Again, that snowstorm we were talking about in the Northern Plains states, Great Lakes region, that is the only one that's significant. You're seeing a lot of 1 to 3 inches, maybe 4 or 5 inches. These are just guesstimates because there's not a lot of snow in the forecast right now. But I wanted to show you the polar region temperatures over the next several days. We're going to start to see this diminish. We're not going to see that bright pink purple in Canada for very much longer. It all retreats up north. Here we are towards the end, not just here in the US, but also over on the other side in Russia. Here we are on the 18th of March, and we start to see that colder Arctic air in Canada starting to lighten up a little bit. Look at that. There we are. So, and we also see it retreating over here too. So this is a pretty good indication that we were winding things down with that brutal cold air. We could still see chilly air, still colder air, but nothing crazy. And where we are in our position for the seasons, this to me is allowing spring to come do its thing by March 21st. So for those of you who are ready for the fall, be patient. It's coming. For most of us, we're going to get a taste of it next Tuesday and beyond. So be patient. The warmer weather's on the way, but the question is, how much moisture, rainfall are we going to see? And how many days the temperatures are going to see that are just hanging around the 40s and the 50s? Again, plant season is right around the corner, folks. The farmers are going to be gearing up for their grow here anytime now. And some areas may be ready and some may not. And that is just part of the challenges that we're going to face in the grand solar minimum over the next 2 to 3 decades. Our grow seasons will be shorter. We might get the plant in, but we might not have a good harvest because of all the crop damage from weather. Or vice versa. We might get a late plant and a weak yield because we didn't have all year for it to grow. We didn't have enough crucial heat days for the crops to mature. So, lots to watch over the next several weeks here, especially because, again, when we have our spring and summer, the southern hemisphere is having their fall and winter, and it's usually a safe bet that we can count on seeing something similar in Australia. Usually relates to what kind of winters we'll have, what kind of winters they have. So if it's intense and cold, we need to pay attention and be ready. We can't be like Texas and get caught like that again, not be ready for these freezes, these flash freezes that do so much damage. Over 30 people died from the cold weather in Texas from that cold snap. We can sit here and point fingers and blame it, the Green New Deal, or we can blame Republican-led leadership that came up with this one grid situation anyway. But the bottom line is we better be prepared. So check out things like books by John Casey, Upheaval. There's a lot of information. If you've been following this channel, or any Grand Solar Minimum channel at that, if you've been following along, when you read this book, Upheaval, it will make 100% sense. It will line up with everything that you know and believe. All right, I want to say hello to a few people out there in the chat. Good evening, the very enthusiastic gardener Pisces. Good to see you out there. Dorothy, Matt Bros, our farmer from Nebraska. Pete, how you doing? I've seen Lee Wheelbarger. Good to have you in our chat tonight. Thank you, sir, for stopping by. Fishing Magician, he is our neighbor here up in Lake George. Let's try that. Lake George, ice is safe. Drive out there. ... I think Fishing Magician is being sarcastic. Unfortunately, we lost a firefighter not too long ago who drove a snowmobile over the ice and was submerged into the icy waters. The ice gave way. Also want to say hello to Randy Wills from Eastern Tennessee. Glad to have you out here tonight as well. Shirley Davis, thanks for stopping by. Good to see everyone out here. If you guys like what we do, check us out on our Teespring store. We have shirts, we have hoodies, coffee mugs, you name it. GSM Grand Solar Minimum conversation starter pieces for your enjoyment, and even as gifts for those enthusiastic weather people in your family and people who like natural disasters. This is the shirt they're going to want. They're going to want to have these conversation pieces to share the knowledge that they have about this, because it's all about being prepared, right? Also, if you'd like to take it a step further and become a member, go to our Patreon channel, Grand Solar Men, or just stay right here at YouTube and become a paid member on our YouTube program. I do believe $1.99 is where the memberships do start. So again, we are subscriber supported. We do appreciate everything that you guys do for us with the views and the comments. Keep them coming. We'd like to know where you're from, what kind of weather you're experiencing. Have you ever been through an earthquake before? Is tonight's comment section question. Have you ever lived through an earthquake? If so, leave us a comment. Let us know what year and what kind of an experience you had from it. Doesn't have to be a long story. It can be, but keep it brief if you wish. But go ahead and leave us a comment tonight and give us a like. Share us to all like-minded folks out there who might need to hear some of this information so they are prepared for what's happening and not hoodwinked, or basically the Green New Deal, global warming people out there have hijacked the Grand Solar Minimum and are trying to use the effects from the Grand Solar Minimum to intensify their theory that the world is having catastrophic events that are ending this planet because of our actions on it, which is a big lie. So anyway, Shirley Davis, hello. I saw you said, hey, Jake, so I want to say hello to you. You're always here. Give you a shout out as well. Guys, once again, thank you very much for tuning in and making us your choice for Grand Solar Minimum News. We will talk to you again on Monday with a full Grand Solar Minimum News update. Until then, stay safe, everyone, and we will talk soon.
Do you like this show? Give us a thumbs up. Want to support us more? Share to your favorite social media platform. Buy a t-shirt or become a Patreon. All links are in the description below.